This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal. I'm joined by Logan Lowery, our Mississippi State beat writer, and this is Double Coverage, a production of the Daily Journal. We're going to talk all things Mississippi State and Ole Miss for the next half hour or so. Logan, signing day, man, 2 takes of it. It's in the books now. How do you feel?
Well, I feel a little tired. It's been a busy week on my beat, and I'm sure it has been for you as well. I mean, Monday it was women's basketball game, biggest, I guess the largest attended college basketball game ever in the state of Mississippi. Tuesday had men's basketball. It was also baseball media day on Tuesday, and then Wednesday was signing day and everything that goes along with that. And Tuesday. I'm losing track of days because Monday normally don't have a women's basketball game on Monday, so I'm losing track of days and stuff. But I'm looking forward to the rest of the week because it's kind of downhill, since then.
Hey, folks, before we get deeper in the program, I want to remind you about a couple of podcasts to look for. Be sure to check out The Memo, our news podcast at the Daily Journal, coming to you every Wednesday and Friday. And check out Prep Rally every Wednesday for all your high school sports needs. And Logan, we'll get into recruiting a little bit here. I enjoyed the fact that signing day, the first Wednesday in February, was a little bit less intense than it normally is. And even we heard Matt Luke, the Ole Miss coach, saying next year he hopes he can sign his whole class in December. And that's probably a move that a lot of coaches would prefer. We'll see. This early signing day and then the second signing day coming in February, we'll see how all this plays out, and we'll get to recruiting here in just a moment. Wanted to throw out there, Logan, a little bit, House Bill 1083, which is making its way through the Mississippi legislature, and I'm simplifying now that but the bill, as I understand it, would basically create more public places that one with a concealed carry permit could carry a weapon, looking to, I think, kind of move past gun-free zones a little bit and just kind of make those places more available where you might carry. And public places, well, there is concern by some that language could work its way into college football stadiums and arenas. And SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey is very concerned about that, and he wrote a letter to Mark Keenum at Mississippi State and Jeff Vitter at Ole Miss, the president and chancellor there, and basically said, look, we oppose this, and if it becomes law, and I'm paraphrasing here, that SEC presidents and chancellors will look at scheduling options. They'll consult their bylaws and see what scheduling options might be available. Now, the way I read that, Logan, and others do too, is, hey, they're looking to move home games out of Mississippi if the bill becomes law, and they're going to look at scheduling options, and they don't want SEC teams playing in venues that allow those concealed carry weapons inside. What do you think, man? We've seen State and Ole Miss win some big road games through the years, but what about a season where you play 8 SEC games and they're all on the road?
Well, the fact that I live about a mile and a half from campus, I'm opposed to that altogether. I enjoy traveling, but I don't want to travel every week. That would be pretty brutal on the old our travel budget for one at the Daily Journal, and my rear end from sitting down and traveling in planes and rental cars.
Well, that travel budget is kind of undergoing some transformation right now anyway. But you being a hunter, just tell me what you think about, concealed carry and concealed weapons in a stadium. Look, if you fire a handgun in a crowd, even if you see the bad guy stand up and somebody is, creating a danger to others, would you feel comfortable firing a handgun anyway in a crowd of people like that?
Yeah, I mean, just with so many thousands and thousands of people, I mean, it would just be chaos. And the crazy thing is, I'm surprised that this bill is made as far as it can. I'm not really a very political person. I hate when politics bleed over into the sports world where I kind of live. But at the same time, it's just crazy because I mean they've cracked down on security at the venues that I'm going to now. I mean, even this past when SEC basketball season started, Mississippi State implemented the clear bag policy for all basketball games, and the first SEC basketball game, I had to get in a hollering match with the security down here at Mississippi State because I wanted to bring my bag, which I tote with me everywhere, that has my computer and my cameras and recorders and everything that I have on me. You know, I've taken it with me ever since I started becoming a reporter, and they wouldn't let me allow me to carry it outside of the media room down to the floor. And I had to holler and scream, and they told me I had to like lug all my stuff in my hands down to the floor. Now they've since corrected that. I think it was just one of those blips that they didn't even think about reporters needing to carry bags down to the floor, and they've since put up a.
When do they think about reporters?
Exactly. After I said a few four-letter words to the security people, they finally, the next game, it was they had somebody to check our bags and put one of those tags on it, and we can carry our bags wherever now. But when they were getting that security thing in place, we weren't on the list of things to think about.
I will say that Ole Miss has done a good job with the bag policy relative to media at the pavilion. From the beginning, we were able to just get checked on the way in, and they'll put a tag on it, and then we're good to go. Because there's a lot of going up and down to those seats and workrooms and whatnot. As far as moving home games, I really don't think it'll ever come to that. But that first thing I thought about when I heard that was back when Ole Miss was getting its penalties from the NCAA back in 1994. One of the things the NCAA spokesman on the conference call said was, well, it could have been worse. And I remember a reporter asking, well, how could it have been worse? And the response was, well, we considered allowing Ole Miss to play only non-conference games. So wow, that just kind of was numbing there. That idea that hey, you're only going to get to you can have football and you're not going to have the death penalty, but you're only going to play out 4 games a year. So for the length of your punishment, whatever that is. Hey, shifting gears a little bit. Hopefully, won't come to that, folks. But something to keep an eye on there. As Logan says, as sports and politics mix. Shifting gears a little bit, Logan, recruiting. Ole Miss had a pretty good class. Now, it didn't feel like that for some at the end, I think, because a number of different scenarios that Matt Luke and his staff were involved with on signing day didn't turn the Rebels' way. Now, I think there are a lot of things that did turn the Rebels' way over the course of bringing together the 2018 class. When you consider the NCAA baggage that Matt Luke was recruiting with, the chaos that he stepped into as interim coach in July, and trying to just not only keep the class together, but add to it. I think that he did a superb job when you look at 2 4-star wide receivers and a 4-star quarterback. And when you consider that on signing day in December or thereabouts, Ole Miss was ranked in the low 60s with this class. And for them to finish, I believe, 31 in the 247 composite rankings, which is a list that, of course, considers all the various recruiting rankings. For that class to finish there, that's pretty good. Now, you're not going to win a lot of SEC games. You're not going to go back to the Sugar Bowl if you have classes year after year that are ranked in the 30s. But for all things considered, with everything that Luke was recruiting with and the baggage that he had to carry, and I'm sure the misinformation from other coaches that he had to sort through and explain, to put together the class he did, I thought was really, really good. I think it did kind of feel like the wind came out of the sails when none of those 50-50 balls, as we hear basketball coaches say, turned the Rebels' way yesterday. All in all, a good class. We'll see. You never really can measure a recruiting class till you get these guys on the field and see how they perform. But one interesting piece with Ole Miss, Tyler Knight of Pearl, the Class 6A Player of the Year, a small guy, 5'7", 173. And didn't have very much Power 5 conference interest at all. And it wasn't until February that he had an offer from Ole Miss, and he had been committed to Louisiana Lafayette. And a lot of people turned heads, like, why would Ole Miss offer? And Luke talked about that a lot at the press conference yesterday, and he said everywhere he went in Mississippi, every discussion he had with other coaches was that this guy was the best player in the state. Well, part of that, Logan, was, part of that is a belief in the kid, I'm sure. Part of that is probably selling the decision to your fan base or whomever. But bottom line is, we've both seen small guys excel and small guys play well, and Tyler Knight's size really doesn't bother me. I think if he's put in the right position, he can be an impact player. It's not hard to imagine a guy of his size as a slot receiver. Slot receivers, they're going to get hit sometimes when they go over the middle. Receivers are going to get hit. You're going to get hit. It's football, but that's not a position where you're getting pounded every play. So if, his size is going to be a challenge, but if he can show some durability, I think he could end up being the surprise of the class. Actually, Luke called him the steal in the class yesterday. It remains to be seen, but I think there are some interesting possibilities for Tyler Knight.
Yeah, for Mississippi State, I mean, most of their signees were signed back in December, and three of those high-profile guys that they signed are all on campus. I think all the four-star guys that they signed in, well, not all of them, but most of the four-star guys that they signed back in December are already in classes here, so they'll go through spring practices and all that. But on Wednesday, Mississippi State signed 8 players. That's a little more than they expected to sign that day. But, you look back, you talk about Mississippi rankings. Joe Moorhead got in here, obviously very late in the process in recruiting, and we're able to hang on to most of the recruits that Dan Mullen already had, on the board. And in the state of Mississippi, Moorhead ended up signing 13 players from Mississippi high schools. He also ended up signing 2 more from the junior college ranks in Mississippi. So, a total of 15 players from Magnolia State schools. And signed the top 6 players according to 24/7. In their Mississippi rankings, the top 6 players are all coming to Mississippi State. And one of those he was able to sign on Wednesday, in Olive Branch defensive tackle Fabian Lovett. They ended up signing. Lovett was committed to Mississippi State under Dan Mullen. He decommitted around, I think it was on New Year's Eve, actually, right when the clock struck midnight. He decommitted from Mississippi State. They were able to get him back on board on signing day. He and teammate Jalen Reed, both coming from Olive Branch, they got commitments back from both of those guys on signing day. And they ended up getting a couple other commitments. Aaron Brule, a linebacker out of Metairie, Louisiana, committed. Cameron Young, defensive end out of Franklin County, committed on signing day. And Cameron Jones, an offensive lineman from right here in Starkville, they were able to flip him from Louisiana Lafayette on signing day as well. So, a couple of additions. Nathaniel Watson was already in the class from Maplesville, Alabama. He's an athlete, but they're going to start his career at linebacker. And Mississippi State also signed another guy from Pearl as well. John Corrius Patterson is a longtime commitment. He's a wide receiver. He was actually the most valuable player in that state championship game for Pearl, but he's going to probably end up starting his career at Jones County Junior College. He ended up double signing with them, and I don't think he's going to have the grades to get into Mississippi State. They signed him anyway. And then Asias Ferge, a longtime commitment from Clarksdale. He's a cornerback. So eight players signed on Wednesday. Mississippi State ends up, I think the last time I looked, it was 27th in the 24/7 rankings. That's a little down from where they were back in the class that they signed in December. They slipped a little bit over the last couple of month and a half or whatever. But, still a very good class. Most of the big name prospects were signed back in December. The 8 that he signed on Wednesday, could be role players down the road, but I don't think any of those are just immediate impact type of guys, especially first year into the program.
Yeah, it certainly looks like most of the higher profile recruits did sign early. this time, and I would think that that becomes a trend. If you get enough people doing it, others will follow. So it will be real interesting to see, how this recruiting cycle progresses, how it is tweaked and changed over time. I don't know that we'll go to one signing day in February, the first Wednesday of February, as we have had for many years. But, the coaches are going to have a couple of years of this and look at it and decide how they like it. Yeah, personally, Logan, I liked the December and then February cycle. I wasn't sure that I would, but it was kind of good to get it out of the way there in December. And yesterday was unusual. It was different in the sense that we know what signing day had become, almost like a national holiday. But it was a little more manageable. There were some interesting recruiting battles going on, and we saw what Georgia was able to do, and we saw a high-profile five-star cornerback from Louisiana go to Alabama, which is almost like an annual tradition. So anyway, you still had a lot of that going on, but just the day in itself was more manageable. Shifting gears a little bit, Logan, let's talk about that women's basketball game. It was the largest crowd in Mississippi for a basketball game, period. Is that correct?
I believe so. I know it was the largest ever in Humphrey Coliseum history, 10,794 people. And they said they had 10,800 tickets sold, so I don't know where those 6 people ended up being on Monday, but just about everybody else was there. It was a great environment. It really was. And it reminded me a lot of those, 90 or, the good teams that Rick Stansbury had at Mississippi State. Just the traffic going into the hump. It just seemed like the atmosphere that I was accustomed to when I first started covering Mississippi State. I know he had the moniker, the toughest ticket in town, and that was obviously a very tough ticket. I mean, the student ticket, the game itself sold out 2 weeks ago. And the student tickets, when they put those on sale, they were sold out in 8 minutes. So it was a tough ticket to get. It was a raucous atmosphere. South Carolina coming in, obviously a rematch of last year's national championship game, and it was a back and forth ball game. South Carolina jumped out to 20-10 lead in that first quarter, and you were thinking, the last time Mississippi State packed the hump out last year was the final game of the regular season against Tennessee. Mississippi State had a chance to win a share of the SEC championship, and they laid an egg in that ball game. And you thought, oh, here they go again. They got the place packed out, and they played terrible to start the ball game. But Mississippi State was able to get back into the ball game, outscored South Carolina 19-8 in that second quarter. And in the fourth quarter, Mississippi State outscored South Carolina 28-9. So the second and fourth quarters were key in Mississippi State getting the 67-53 victory over South Carolina, the first time they've beaten the Gamecocks since Vic Schaefer arrived there. But it was a really big win for them to kind of get over that hump. I think that may be the only team in the SEC that they haven't beaten under Schaefer, so they were able to get that done. And they've got a chance to, now that they've got over that hurdle, they've got a chance to finish out the regular season undefeated. They're 24-0, 10-0. They go to Florida tonight. That's a team that they beat by 37 back on January the 25th. So they've got to keep their mind focused. It's obviously you could obviously have a letdown. You have such a big emotional game, a big win on Monday, and then you go down to Florida, a team that you just destroyed a few weeks ago, and is not playing very well. They did actually play Missouri down to the wire, so maybe they're getting a little bit better. But yeah, they got to keep their wits about them when they go down to Florida tonight, and hopefully we'll have to see. Hopefully that's going to be a good game. That's what Mississippi State needs. They needed to kind of be engaged in that game and make sure their minds are right.
Well, I bet Vic Schaefer's rallying cry tonight is "Remember the Rebels," Logan, because in a similar scenario, teams of about equal quality here this season, Florida and Ole Miss. State beats Ole Miss by 30-some-odd points in Starkville and went to Oxford and won by 20. And it sounds like a lopsided game. It was never a game that was in doubt, but it was a game in which Mississippi State did not play its best basketball throughout. They just won mostly because they were a lot more talented. But it was not a game that made Schaefer very happy afterwards. So it will be interesting to watch their focus in a similar scenario against Florida, a team they've already beaten very handily at home. Now they go on the road. Will they be a little more focused throughout, especially coming off that South Carolina game? Logan, basketball at Ole Miss right now just is not good for either of the sexes. It's quite possible there could be 2 coaching searches at the end of the season. That remains to be seen. Certainly, there's been no official word on that from the administration, but when you look at the product on the floor with both the men and the women right now, it does not match up with what Ross Bjork has repeatedly said are his expectations for the basketball programs. And he has said this more in regard to the men because that's been where the greater discussion has been. But he wants the team to wake up on Selection Sunday and hopefully know beyond the shadow of a doubt that they are in the tournament. But if they're not in the tournament, he wants them to know that, hey, they're in the conversation. Maybe they get some things turned their way. Maybe the right people lose or the numbers work out. But he wants them to wake up on Sunday and know they're right there. Either they're solidly in or they're right there in the conversation. And that just hasn't happened for Ole Miss since the 2015 season when the Rebels played in the NCAA tournament, played in the first 4, had that memorable comeback against BYU. Stephon Moody was playing really lights-out basketball at that time, and they go on and face Xavier in the next round there in Jacksonville. So it's been the last time that they've really been in the conversation. So it's kind of trending that way, that change is becoming more and more possible, I would say, with Ole Miss now having lost 6 of its last 7 games and going on the road this week to face LSU. And it's not that LSU is so imposing. The Tigers have had some success and have been up and down a little bit under first-year coach Will Wade, but it's more the idea that Ole Miss has not been a very good road team at all, has not won on the road, and has lost decisively in its last 2 road games. I think the road has become a little bit of a mental block for Ole Miss. And, in losing 75-69 at home against Missouri Tuesday night, it was an Ole Miss team that looked to be playing hard, but just looked a little out of sync at times. I don't think there was a question of lack of effort, but certainly they were not able to make the plays down the stretch and win the game. The Ole Miss women have lost 7 straight as they play at number 14 Texas A&M tonight, and they will play without their leading scorer, Medina Muhammad, who is averaging 17.3 points. She's going to sit out the game going through concussion protocol. Tell us about the Mississippi State men, Logan, which I guess are the second hottest basketball team in Mississippi.
Yeah, they've won 4 straight, and they're playing a more confident brand of basketball right now. And they've reeled off wins against Missouri. Then they went on the road to South Carolina and won. They beat Georgia here at home this past weekend, and then Tuesday night beat an Alabama team that they had previously lost on the road to in Tuscaloosa not that long ago. Ended up winning that game 67-63 Tuesday night, and it was a battle back and forth the entire ball game. It kind of broke into one of those free throw fests. We see just so many fouls called a lot in SEC basketball, and it was another one of those type of games. It's just a strange game, but Mississippi State found a way to win that game at the very end, and they're playing really good basketball. Right now, you see the maturation of freshmen Abdullah Dew and Nick Weatherspoon. You just see them getting more comfortable out there on the court, and they're playing so much more confidently. Abdul has become more of an offensive weapon for Mississippi State down in the paint, and that's helped them because they're not having to take as many three-point shots. So they shot very poorly from three-point range again against Alabama the other night, 2 of 19. But Alabama wasn't very much better. They were 3 of 22 from three-point range. So it was a horrible three-point shooting night all the way around for both teams. But Mississippi State, right now they're 18-6. They're 6-5 in the SEC. and it's the first time they've won 4 straight SEC games in a row in 10 years. So this team is trending upward. You know, they've still got some ways to go as far as to get into the postseason mix. But right now they're starting to get in the conversation. So they need a couple more wins up under their belt. They play at Missouri this weekend. They go up there, and obviously they beat Missouri 74-62, beat them pretty handily here in Starkville back on January the 27th. So if they can carry that momentum up on the road to Columbia and win their second straight road game, that would be a big time for this team. Who, you know, they're kind of like Ole Miss. They've that road's been a hurdle for them. They did get the hump finally against South Carolina in their last one, but Missouri is going to be a tough venue to go play in, and obviously Ole Miss didn't have very much success there when they went. Mississippi State will try their luck this weekend. 1 o'clock tip on Saturday on ESPN2.
Well, I'll tell you what, Logan, Cassius Robertson from Missouri, the graduate transfer at point guard, has been a really good player. But the guy who most impressed me for Missouri Tuesday night was 6'11" Jonte Porter, the freshman. Just he came off the bench. Came off the bench and got in foul trouble. He only played like 22 minutes, but he had 18 points and 13 rebounds, blocked shots, made big plays even when he wasn't scoring. And he was scoring from the three-point line and putting the ball on the floor, getting to the rim. So he's going to be a load. He's going to be a good player. So it'll be a challenge for the Bulldogs at Missouri this week. But when you are 6-5 in conference play through 11 games, you got a lot of options. There's a lot on the table, a lot to play for. Hey, folks, that'll wrap us up for this edition of Double Coverage. We thank you for clicking in with us today. Be sure to check out the Memo, our news podcast, and check out Prep Rally for all your high school sports needs. And Logan and I will be back with you next week for another round of Double Coverage.